Yesterday was testy for Alejandro Mayorkas, and, as far as I'm concerned, it should be. And one of the reasons for that was courtesy of Kansas U.S. Senator Roger Marshall, who was grilling the Secretary of Homeland Security because the border is an absolute mess. And, geez, if you know anything about what's been going on over the world in the last 3 weeks, you better believe that the border needs to be focused on, and it hasn't been focused on in the better part of, almost 3 years now. So let's welcome on Senator Marshall to KCMO Talk Radio. Senator, a lot to dive into this morning, but I saw some of that grill session you gave Mayorkas yesterday. What did you want to make sure that you were getting across to him on behalf of the people of Kansas?
Well, good morning, Pete. I think number one is I want him to understand how concerned people in Kansas and Missouri, you've got a lot of Missouri listeners there as well, and that we're concerned about our safety and security. I think it's the number one issue. I think that the safety and security of our families will be the defining issue of the next presidency. And there's a reason that Kansans are concerned about their safety and security, that we're losing a Kansan every day from fentanyl poisoning. This nation is losing 300 people every day. Crime rates are going up. Wherever there's drugs, there's going to be crime. Human trafficking is on the rise as well. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that our secretary will not acknowledge there's a problem, nor take any responsibility for it. That his policies, Joe Biden's policies, are a magnet that have created the problem that 2/3 of the people we're seeing at the border are coming here asking for asylum. And they've traveled through 3 or 4 other nations before they got here. That's not the purpose of asylum. So I think that there's no taking of responsibilities, finger pointing, absolutely maybe the most incompetent person I've ever seen as a secretary of anything up here.
Senator Marshall is joining us on KCMO Talk Radio, now in FM at 95.7. It's always good to have him on the show. Do you think that he actually believes in the policy that he is promoting, Senator? You know what, actually, let's Senator, do you mind calling us back? Your phone is clicking on our end.
Okay, I'll do it right away.
We're going to have Roger Marshall call us right back. We're having some issues there on his phone. But what I want to dive into next with him is whether or not he believes that Mayorkas' policies are truly his own. If he thinks Mayorkas believes in his lack of a border policy, or whether or not Mayorkas is just a pawn for this White House. So, Senator, what do you think about that, and whether or not Mayorkas is really doing this because he thinks it's in the best interest of the American people, or he's just doing what he's told?
Well, certainly his marching orders from the Obama-Biden White House is to bring these people across the border. They want these 8 million people as new voters. So this is part of their plan, but they're sacrificing Americans because of it. I think we need to back up and talk about the 170 terrorists that they've encountered, that they've caught trying to get into this country. He refuses to tell us where they are, what they're doing. Are they in this country right now? He admitted that we have 600,000 gotaways in the past year, and that's going to be a low number that he's admitting to. These are people that the Border Patrol, maybe they're capturing 10 people that are crossing the river, but there's 100 people in the river getting across, and they grabbed 10 of them and 90 got away. So there's 600,000 gotaways in the last year. What are those people doing? Where are they at as well? So, again, I think that, to your point, that the White House wants this crisis, and they're willing to sacrifice Americans to achieve their goal.
Senator Marshall is on KCMO. What do you make when it comes to the funding for Israel? It looks like the House is set to vote on a standalone funding bill for Israel. It's going to be about $14 billion. We know the White House, and it seems like Senate leadership, Chuck Schumer, wants $100 billion, and the bulk of that would go for Ukraine, not Israel. How do you see this playing out in the Senate if you guys do get a clean funding bill exclusively to support Israel?
Right. So I've been supporting standalone funding for Israel since the day this war broke out. And let me explain why. Joe Biden has an opportunity to send a unified message. I bet 98 out of 100 senators would vote for standalone Israel funding. And on the House, it's going to be a super majority as well. that would send a message to Iran, to Hamas, and all these puppets that the United States is not going to tolerate terrorism. This is more than just a war between the people of Israel and the Hamas army of terror. This is a war for the future of humankind, the future that we're not going to tolerate terrorism like this. It's brutal, savage attacks. We're not going to tolerate them, and that we will retaliate as only they understand how to retaliate. If we go through this Ukraine funding business, it'll take weeks and most likely months because there's so much controversy over it. Just in the last week, we're seeing Poland, Hungary, and other countries, Slovakia, saying there's corruption going on in Ukraine. That's just the start of the argument. We could talk the rest of the morning about why I'm concerned about the Ukraine funding, but there's near unanimity up here for funding for Israel. We need to send a message to Iran yesterday. And by the way, Israel could well have a war on 3 fronts here in just a matter of days. They need the weapons yesterday as well.
Well, okay. I mean, that's great. That seems like it's incredibly bipartisan, where if you saw, you said 98 out of 100 senators, just ballpark, would vote for clean Israel funding. But it looks like leadership, like I heard Chuck Schumer say yesterday that, well, that's not the right way to go about doing it. So could he block a clean funding for Israel bill?
Absolutely, and we've already introduced legislation for the standalone Israel funding, and we're going to bring it to some type of unanimous consent process, hopefully this week, if not Monday. Kind of waiting to see what the House is going to do. But he's the leader; he has the gavel. He controls what can go, what we vote on, and not vote on. So at the same time, certainly, if he puts the Ukraine funding with Israel, it'll be hard for a lot of us to vote against that as well. It's kind of like Senator Roberts had a name for this type of sandwich. I can't use it. They would give us some bad meat with some good meat as well. But you're right. He can do this. So this is what's so sad, is that they're leveraging this crisis in Israel to pay for their never-ending Ukraine war. Look, I think that's a war that's going to last 7, 9, 10 years. They're at a stalemate. 200,000 people have died already in that war. We need to be focusing on a peace process in Ukraine. At the same time, we need to make sure that Israel has everything that she needs to defend herself against this army of terror.
So we'll be following. You think that's all going to take place this week on the Senate side as well after you get something from the House?
I think the House is going to vote on this Thursday afternoon, and I'm going to keep my cards close to my chest, what Mike Lee and Ted Cruz and Rick Scott and Josh Hawley and a few of us others are up to. As far as parliamentarian procedures, whether we're going to do something this week or next week, and I've got a couple aces up my sleeve, and we'll come back next week and talk about them.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to that conversation. By the way, before I let you go, I know the Chiefs had a tough loss, but KU and K-State are both in the top 25, so it's good times for football in this state at large.
Oh my gosh, yeah! I can't wait till the KU K-State game. It's probably the two best KU K-State teams at the same time that we've seen in 20 or 30 years. Quality football. No one wants to see us in a bowl game right now. Happy for them, and we just got to put that Chiefs loss behind us, just pretend like it never happened, and just somehow vomit that loss and get on to next week. Huge game early Sunday morning, remember.
Yeah, early Sunday morning game, of course, in Germany against the Dolphins. Well, Senator, thank you as always for the time. We'll be following along, and we appreciate it.
You bet, Pete. Thank you. Bye.
That's Roger Marshall on KCMO Talk Radio, now on FM at 95.7.